The 11th hit, and game over. This is a Leopard 2 that just walked straight into a perfect trap. Here's how it was set up. The Leopard 2 rolls into a firing position like a mammoth that makes the ground shake. Russian infantry is shaking too, huddled among the trees in a tree line. Boom! But immediately after the shot, the Leopard 2 turns into a rabbit. What happened? The tank commander realizes it's a trap. Sure enough, a few seconds later, the first mortar round detonates behind the tank. Undershoot. The next round explodes literally in front of the driver. But the Leopard 2 punches through the debris. Another round comes in and detonates just a few meters ahead. The zone is perfectly zeroed in. The Leopard 2 maneuvers like mad, because Russian mortar crews can sometimes drop a round right on target. It's a lottery. The forest is the only way out. But what if that's a trap too?
Замаскувати срочно танк. Шукай, там впереду ділянка. Ти ззаду пропустив.
The Leopard 2 crashes into the forest, but they're already waiting. The first drone gets tangled in the net, but detonates and partially destroys the protective mesh. The second drone reaches the turret, but the frontal armor holds. The third drone comes in from the rear.
Куди ти їдеш? Стань!
The tank reverses and tries to break away from this killing zone. The crew is fighting to save the vehicle, but a few hundred meters later, another drone hits the rear again. Speed is gone. From here, the Russian UAV operators take their time. The Leopard 2 stops. The mammoth hunt is almost over. But wait, it's not over. Look, the engine fires back up. That emergency mode is an absolute lifesaver. The Leopard 2 crawls forward like a wounded animal. But a few hundred meters further on, the tank finally stops for good. No one's coming to help. After the 11th hit, the Leopard 2 catches fire. Game over. So what exactly just happened? The infantry in the forest was bait. For Russian commanders, using live bait against the Leopard 2 isn't forbidden. But why didn't the Russians use ATGMs or artillery? If you think this was random, it wasn't. You're about to find out why. Along the way, you'll also see the weakest spots on the German tank that the Russians have figured out. 10 ways to kill a Leopard 2 and what German engineers actually think about all of it. But before, hit like and subscribe to our channel. Your support matters. So, to destroy a stationary tank, Russian artillery crews need an average of 30 to 50 rounds of 152mm ammunition. Factor in corrections and adjustments, and that takes a lot of time. Enough for the tank to do its job and get out, while the artillery crew itself becomes a target for counter-battery fire. But there are things out there far more dangerous to tanks than artillery. When 12 Turkish Leopard 2A4s were destroyed in Syria, it became clear that the biggest threat to German tanks came from Russian ATGMs. The Cornet, for example, punches clean through. But in Ukraine, it's a different story, because the Ukrainians have learned to deal with that threat. First, the Turkish tanks were knocked out by anti-tank missiles while sitting stationary, like they were on a training range. Ukrainians don't make that mistake. And second, Ukrainian Leopard 2 commanders discovered the magic of the standard Perry R-17 panoramic sight.
When I told an instructor from Canada about this, he was blown away. Then he took off his Royal Troops patch and gave it to me.
Here's the explanation. The Leopard 2 commander can look through his own sight and also switch to the gunner's sight to see his picture. But it turned out the toggle switch has a third position, mix. The commander sees both pictures simultaneously, his own and the gunner's. But nobody teaches this during the standard 40-day training course, because the instructor's main job is to get crews through the basic tactical drills. War, though, is always an accelerated education. So how does that third toggle position actually help against ATGMs? In mix mode, the Leopard 2 commander becomes a two-faced Janus. He watches his gun tracking onto the target, while at the same time catching an enemy missile launch from the flank out of the corner of his eye. His move? There are two options here, and neither of them is a farewell prayer, even if the anti-tank missile is already flying at 300 meters per second. Option 1. Pop smoke grenades and immediately reposition under cover of the screen. The specialized metallic particles in the smoke scatter the laser beam. The missile simply loses its guidance signal and goes dumb. Option 2. Hit the priority button and swing the heavy turret toward the new target at 40 degrees per second. The new target instantly appears in the gunner's sight. No explanation needed. All the gunner has to do is hit the laser rangefinder button so the computer calculates the correction. Then pull the trigger. Boom! There isn't a single piece of footage online from ATGM operators who found themselves on the receiving end of a Leopard 2. That's not a coincidence. A high-explosive fragmentation round flies at around 1,000 meters per second and leaves nothing but a wet spot after impact. Russian ATGM operators simply don't get the chance to post their videos. But there's plenty of footage online of Russian drones tearing apart Western tanks, including the Leopard 2. That said, actually killing a tank with a drone isn't that straightforward, because the warhead is small, so first you have to immobilize the tank. How? For example, with an anti-tank mine. The fragments can't punch through German armor, but if a track takes the hit, the tank stops. Then it either gets finished off with ATGMs or pounded with drones until the ammunition cooks off. Another way to snap a track is to hit it with a drone or a lancet. Destroying a track or road wheel instantly kills the tank's mobility, but hitting a moving tank's track with an FPV drone is a difficult shot. The closer the drone gets to the ground, the more interference it picks up from the terrain. On top of that, rubber or armored side skirts usually cover the top section of the track. To snap it, you have to hit the exposed lower section or the drive sprocket. So operators tend to go for the engine compartment. Right here, into one of these two large ring radiators that cool the engine coolant and transmission fluid. That's the Leopard 2's most vulnerable spot. But as you've already seen, one hit is often not enough. The thing is, the fluid-filled radiators absorb the blow, but the engine and transmission sitting underneath them stay intact. That's exactly why the Leopard 2 keeps moving even after multiple hits. By the way, the Swedish STR V122, built on the Leopard 2 platform, shares the exact same vulnerabilities. You can find the video about the Swedish tank and its luckier fate after a Russian drone attack on our channel. But then why do Russian drones keep hitting the turret if they can't punch through it? Because the gun mantlet is also one of the few weak zones in the frontal profile. Due to the placement of the barrel and the sighting systems, the armor there is thinner. On top of that, this is where the external optics are mounted. And without them, the Leopard 2 turns into an armored tractor, because it can no longer engage targets with any precision. The turret-to-hull junction is also a vulnerable spot. A precise hit there can jam the turret traverse mechanism, effectively knocking the tank out as a combat unit. Generally speaking, FPV drones typically carry an RPG-7 warhead. The shaped charge jet from that warhead can punch through up to 500 millimeters of rolled homogeneous steel armor. That's more than enough, with room to spare, to go straight through the turret roof, because the armor up top is no more than 40 millimeters thick. But in practice, that almost never happens. Why? There are several critical factors that save the Leopard 2. First, the shaped charge jet forms too early when it hits the protective cages or nets, losing its penetrating power before it reaches the main armor. The net tears, burns, but the main armor stays untouched. Second, the ERA that Ukrainians bolt onto the Leopard 2 themselves detonates into the jet and disrupts it, so it can no longer punch through even thin armor. Third, a shaped charge jet only works at full efficiency on a perfectly perpendicular impact. If the drone hits at a sharp angle, the jet deflects across the metal surface. That's why we often see a bright flash from the warhead. But the tank keeps rolling, because the main armor is intact. So drones aren't an automatic death sentence. But the risks for tanks and their crews are very real. So what do the German engineers think about all this? Representatives from Rheinmetall are rethinking the entire protection concept. The Leopard 2 was designed for tank duels where rounds come in from the front. But now they're developing solutions to reinforce exactly the zones that are getting hit from above. It's a slow process, because German engineers are not Ukrainian housewives who can knock together a solution overnight. But the key question is, how do you do this without radically increasing the tank's weight? The first solution is the Trophy Active Protection System, which is currently being integrated into the Leopard, 2A7 and A8. Trophy is designed to intercept drones on their approach using countershots. Rheinmetall engineers are also pushing the idea that a tank can no longer protect itself on its own. They're proposing that the Leopard 2 be escorted by air defense systems like the Sky Ranger, cannons with programmable ammunition that create a shrapnel cloud and destroy drone swarms at distances up to 2 kilometers. Companies Titan and KNDS have developed an interesting anti-UAV complex that launches interceptor drones, specifically integrating the Interceptor S air defense drone onto the Boxer RCT-30APC. Similar technology could end up on tanks. And here's something worth noting. The Germans have finally acknowledged the effectiveness of cope cages and have started developing factory-built protection solutions. New Leopard variants are already coming with standard mounting points for lightweight mesh structures. On top of that, engineers are working on integrating modular EW systems directly into the tank's electronics. The electronic dome is designed to cut the drone's link to its operator at 50 to 100 meters before impact. That said, both Ukrainians and Russians are already fitting EW systems to their tanks, but it's not 100% protection, because frequencies keep changing, and fiber optic drones don't care about jamming at all. So the problem remains unsolved. But drop a comment with your own idea for protecting a tank. The most interesting suggestions we'll pass on directly to Ukrainian tankers. If you're not ready to form an opinion yet because you feel you need more information, check out these playlists. You'll find the most dangerous and controversial tank operations of this war. Stay safe and support Ukraine.